A fossil, a fossil. Oh yes, we studied fossils while some are small.
Welcome to second grade ELA Tidbits. I'm Barbara, your second grade curriculum specialist. You can access the full Tidbits deck using my bit.ly G2 Tidbits 25. The slides include my detailed notes and links to all the resources discussed. Today, we are going to break down modules for the week of January 12th. This week in Unit 3, Lesson 9, is the final lesson in which students go through scaffolded writing instruction to produce a narrative about discovering a fossil based on Holly's experiences, which is W2.3. Students revise and edit their narratives using teacher feedback. Students will repeat the same revising and editing process in the Unit 3 Assessment Part 2. Students plan their new narrative in Lesson 10, setting themselves up for success in the end-of-unit assessment on Lessons 11 and 12. You can see the standards by lesson on the screen. Today we're going to look at W2.3, but this time zoom in on W2.3b. We've already discussed that in W2.3, students are asked to write well-elaborated narratives. Today we're going to zoom in on a substandard of W2.3. W2.3b states that with guidance and support from adults and peers, students will focus on a topic and strengthen writing as needed by revising and editing. W2.3b has two different DOK levels, depending on the type of revising and editing students are applying to their narratives. Applying rules or using resources to edit specific spelling, grammar, punctuation conventions, or word use is considered DOK 1. And revising a final draft for meaning, progression of ideas, or logical chain of events is a DOK level 3. This span of DOK levels illustrates why it is important to give students feedback in both areas, editing for conventions and revising for meaning. Let's look at teacher and student actions for W2.3b. We are focusing on Lesson 9 because students will repeat this same revising and editing process in the Unit 3 Assessment Part 2 during Lesson 12. Lesson 9 gives students the opportunity to practice. Prior to the start of the lesson, it's critical that the teacher review each student's writing and complete their revising and editing checklist. The aligned learning targets in the lesson narrative are: I can revise my narrative using a revising and editing checklist, and I can edit my narrative using a revising and editing checklist. Work time A begins with the teacher framing their revising and editing process and reorienting students to materials like the checklist and the compelling narrative anchor chart. Next, the teacher models and thinks aloud how he or she would use the feedback on the model checklist. To model, you could use some slides like the ones on the screen, or you could use your document camera or chart paper, wherever you have your teacher model of the narrative. What's important is to be clear how students read your feedback and how they use their colored pencils to make revisions and edits. After modeling, students have some time to read their feedback, think about their revisions, and rehearse or talk about them with a partner. After some partner talk about what changes will be made, students work independently to revise and edit their piece. To track student progress in W2.3 and W2.3b, you have the narrative writing checklist. Make notes each day on student progress to help you prepare for any needed small group writing conferences. Before Lesson 9, it may be helpful to review the end of Unit 3 assessment rubric. This rubric may help inform your teaching in both Lesson 9 for revising practice and in Lesson 12 when students revise and edit for Part 2 of the assessment. Let's zoom in on the revising and editing section of the rubric. You can see that the teacher will need to know what revisions and edits the student made to score this section. This is why having students use a different color in their revisions is very helpful. The edits and revisions students make will also impact their scores in other areas of the rubric. There are a few just-in-time supports that can be implemented for students in W2.3b. If students have been planning and drafting using the color coding strategy, then connect feedback to the color-coded categories and sections. If students experience high levels of frustration with revising and editing, then consider reviewing the feedback individually to ensure they clearly understand how to implement the suggestions. The revising and editing checklist focuses on what students need to improve. Just as important, consider how to give specific feedback on what students did well. Get excited. This will enable the student to identify and repeat his or her success next time. Thank you for joining me for this week's module tidbit. See you back next week.
A fossil, a fossil. Oh yes, we studied fossils, while some are small and some are big.